If you find yourself eating a banana and it makes the sound of a cocking gun, maybe you shouldn't eat that banana. What is this that stands before me? Figure in black, which points at me. Greetings, my fellow JoJo fans. It's time to take a look at another episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind. And a lot of the epicness emerges from the shadows in this episode. In fact, this episode gets particularly metal. We finally get to see Giorno throwing down against Polpo's stand, Black Sabbath. Before I begin my review, let me just go ahead and say this right off the bat, that this episode just absolutely oozed with JoJo's style. It might be my favorite episode of this season thus far, and was a great preview to show how crazy, ridiculous, and over-the-top this season is planning on getting. At the end of the last episode, Giorno is now at the mercy of Polpo's stand, Black Sabbath, which has the ability to rip out people's souls as well as their stand powers. It then injects them with an arrow, which just might be the very arrow which gives people their stand powers in the first place. In fact, this is all actually tied to what Polpo's overall plan is when it comes to doing these initiation tests of getting into Passione. If you end up getting stabbed with the arrow, and if you die, well, you just weren't worthy. But if you can manifest a stand ability, you might just be able to be a part of this amazing mafia organization. We also get to learn that his stand actually has the ability to move through the shadows, and it gets harmed by sunlight. Essentially, it's a gremlin. Giorno seems a little out of his league when he's battling against Black Sabbath at first, but luckily Koichi arrives to help him out and to argue with him and to drag out the pacing of the episode. But it also highlights the amazing ability of Black Sabbath, the way that it actually moves through the shadows. The way that they visually show this in this episode, honestly, I can't do it justice. You have to see it for yourself, but just the shots of it actually creeping up this staircase, going up every single one that the shadow is overlapping on, is honestly just amazing. Giorno actually ends up saving Koichi, which starts to put him in his favor just a little bit more, and luckily Koichi has a lot of experience of dealing with remote user stand users. Hence, we know that the guy who's actually controlling this thing is far away, thus if they try to damage this thing, it's not necessarily going to hurt the user. And of course, these remote controlled stands always happen to be completely broken in terms of what they're actually capable of, so these two characters are going to have to get over their squabbles and work together. And indeed, they end up doing just that, realizing that the only way that they're going to be able to beat Black Sabbath is if they drag this son of a bitch right into the sun and just completely wail on him. And of course, Giorno is able to use his abilities and a little bit of trickery and help from Koichi in order to make this happen. Giorno and Koichi actually end up hiding behind this tree, but of course this ends up being the perfect opportunity for Black Sabbath to attack. But this is when Giorno reveals another one of his abilities, which is to basically go into the ground with his stand, take control of this tree, and cause it to rapidly age so that it withers away to nothing, revealing a massive blast of sunlight, which ends up hitting Black Sabbath, and then of course Gold Experience comes in to finish the job with some amazingly badass punches. They could have ended the entire episode with that scene right there, and I would have been completely satisfied for how incredibly well paced it was, and how over-the-top and action-packed it was. Not to mention that amazing JoJo style, such as changing up all of the different colors, always giving the viewers something completely new and amazing to look at. But no, I think my favorite scene of the episode has to be the conclusion. Now that Giorno has officially passed this test, he decides to return to Polpo, giving him back his lighter, and officially becoming a part of the Passione group. However, before he leaves, he uses his stand's powers on a banana in Polpo's fridge. And the very next day, while Polpo was actually eating this banana, it turns out that it was actually a gun that Giorno transformed, and this thing ends up blowing his big fat head right the fuck off. Now, the reason that Giorno actually decided to do this is because he wanted to get revenge for the old man who got caught up in all of these crazy events and ended up losing his life. Not to mention, he probably realized that Polpo himself is kind of a crazy son of a bitch. But I have to say that despite the fact that Giorno himself is a hero, he's without a doubt the coldest motherfucker that I have ever seen from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it gets me so excited to see more of what he's going to do and how far he's going to walk that line between being a hero and a mafia villain. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the rundown of this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind. This episode, guys, was fan-freaking-tastic. Visually speaking, like I said, I can't really do it justice, but the battle against Black Sabbath in this episode take my word for it, is just freaking incredible. The way that Black Sabbath is animated, it is moving through the shadows in the interesting way that they utilize its ability to go through the shadows. One of my favorite uses of him going through the shadows is these two birds that are flying over the city, and it actually like contains itself within their shadows, which are actually being cast on the ground so that it can get closer to Giorno and Corci and just do all of this crazy damage to them. It was really satisfying. I also have to say that it was really cool to see sort of that classic rapid punching style that we saw from the previous seasons of the show. While Giorno's Stand Gold experience is not basically confined to just doing that, it still has the ability to kick all sorts of ass, and also its ability to imbue life with things and transform stuff, and I mean, just, I'm just gushing at this moment, to be perfectly honest. Really, that's my favorite thing about Giorno, is the fact that he isn't like the other JoJo characters. Superficially, from a design standpoint, he definitely fits within the series, but he's carving out his very own destiny and his very own story, and little by little as the series is going on, it looks like it's going to have nothing to do with any of the previous characters. It looks like Koichi is going to be returning to Jotaro. He's completely okay with this Giorno kid, and that's pretty much the end of that story. But there are some interesting things to talk about here. First, like the fact that Polpo's stand, Black Sabbath, contained within its body an arrow. The arrow, the one that can give people the ability to awaken their stands or just die on the spot. Now, obviously, this was used to sort of weed out the weaklings and to bring in some stand users, but how do they even have possession of an arrow in the first place, and are we ever going to see more of it in action in this show? At the very end of the episode, when Polpo accidentally blows his brains out with the banana gun, we get to see that the actual arrow itself was destroyed, but will someone retrieve it? Will it still be useful? Are there even more arrows than we could have possibly imagined? It's really hard to say. But what I will say is that this episode was incredibly well-paced and extremely action-packed, and again gave me something that I've always loved from the show, which is its amazingly unpredictable and very creative battles. That and the fact that, as I said, this episode is just hemorrhaging style. I cannot get over how good this show consistently looks, and how the wacky, over-the-top, and super flamboyant character design actually just really works to the credit of this show. It allows these characters to absolutely pop against the relatively normal backgrounds of the show, and that combined with the amazing differences in color scheme that we constantly see that shift during the action scenes to enhance the atmosphere, just really make this show work right here. And man, Polpo getting killed with the banana gun. Polpo with the banana gun, that shit is epic, and that's why I'm giving this episode a 5 out of 5. You guys need to check out this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind, and if any of you did, tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below, and what you hope to see from the rest of the Golden Wind anime series. Thank you guys for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down, baby.